The sea glitters beneath a golden sun. The wind carries the echo of forgotten voices, of warriors, philosophers, and poets. Here, on these rocky shores, humanity first learned to think freely, to question gods, and to dream of perfection. This is ancient Greece, where democracy was born, where wisdom found its voice, and where human reason began its long journey toward truth. It is not merely the story of a nation, it is the story of civilization itself. Now, let's unfold this story in 8 parts. Part 1, the dawn of Greek civilization, from myth to reality. Long before the marble temples of Athens and the disciplined armies of Sparta, there existed a world of mystery, a Greece that lived in legend. On the island of Crete around 3000 BCE, the first great civilization of Europe was born, the Minoans. They were not warriors, but traders, artists, and dreamers. Their ships ruled the Aegean, connecting Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the rising Mediterranean world. Their capital, Knossos, was a wonder, a sprawling labyrinth of corridors and courtyards covered in vibrant frescoes of leaping dolphins, sacred bulls, and dancing women. They worshipped the mother goddess, celebrating life, fertility, and nature itself. There were no fortress walls, for they believed peace, not war, was their protection. But the gods can be cruel. Around 1450 BCE, the island was shaken by catastrophe. A violent volcanic eruption on nearby Thera, or Santiri, sent tsunamis crashing into Crete. Ash darkened the skies, crops failed, and when the earth grew silent, the Minoan world lay in ruins. From the mainland came a new people, the Mycenaeans, fierce warriors who spoke an early form of Greek. They built stone citadels atop hills, Mycenae, Tiryns, Pylos, guarded by cyclopean walls so massive that later generations believed giants had built them. Their kings ruled with bronze and blood, driven by a thirst for power and glory. It was this world that gave birth to the legends we still tell, of Agamemnon, Achilles, and Odysseus, of love and betrayal, of the great war for Troy. The poet Homer would later immortalize their deeds in the Iliad and the Odyssey, blending truth and myth into the soul of Greece itself. But like the Minoans before them, the Mycenaeans fell. Around 1200 BCE, their palaces burned, their kings vanished, and Greece descended into centuries of silence, a period historians call the Dark Age. Writing disappeared, trade stopped, art and architecture were forgotten. Yet in the darkness, the embers of culture still glowed, in the songs of wandering bards, in oral tales passed from generation to generation. Then, around 800 BCE, Greece stirred again. Villages grew into towns. People began to trade, to write again, using a new alphabet borrowed from the Phoenicians. And from this rebirth rose something extraordinary, the polis, or city-state, small, self-governing communities that would shape the destiny of the Greek world. This was no longer a land of kings, it was becoming a land of citizens. Part 2, the birth of the polis, cities of freedom and pride. By the 8th century BCE, Greece had transformed. The land was rugged, mountains divided valleys, and the sea stitched them together. Instead of one empire, Greece became a patchwork of city-states, each fiercely independent, each proud of its own identity. The most famous of these were Athens and Sparta, but there were hundreds more: Corinth, Thebes, Delphi, and Olympia. Each polis had its own laws, government, and gods. Yet they all shared one language, one culture, and one set of beliefs: that to be Greek was to be free. In Athens, democracy and debate flourished. Citizens gathered in the agora, the marketplace of ideas, where they discussed politics, philosophy, and art. Athenians believed the mind was humanity's greatest weapon. Their temples, sculptures, and dramas reflected beauty,
reason, and balance, what they called arete, the pursuit of excellence. Sparta, by contrast, was forged in iron and discipline. Nestled in the Peloponnesian hills, it was a society built entirely for war. From the age of 7, boys were taken from their families and trained to fight, to obey, to endure. They lived simply, no gold, no luxury, only duty. Their courage at Thermopylae would one day become legend, but their rigidity would also be their curse. Elsewhere, the city of Corinth prospered as a center of trade and craftsmanship. Delphi became the spiritual heart of Greece, home to the oracle of Apollo, where kings and peasants alike came seeking prophecy. And every 4 years, all Greeks, enemies and allies alike, laid down their weapons to gather at Olympia, where the Olympic Games honored Zeus through sport and peace. These festivals were more than competitions. They were symbols of unity in a world of division. When an athlete won, his city rejoiced, for his victory was theirs. Thus was born the Greek idea of honor through achievement, the belief that greatness came from individual excellence and service to one's polis. The city-state was more than geography. It was identity. To be Athenian, Spartan, or Corinthian meant to belong, to participate, to be part of something larger than oneself. And from this idea that citizens, not kings, held power, came the first sparks of democracy. The stage was set. Soon, Athens would rise to lead Greece into an age of reason, beauty, and freedom. But first, the Greek mind would awaken in a way the world had never seen before.
Part 3. The Rise of Philosophy, the Awakening of the Mind. As the city-states flourished, a quiet revolution began, not with swords or armies, but with questions. For the first time in human history, people began to look beyond myth and seek reason. In Athens, the air buzzed with ideas. Merchants debated ethics over wine. Artists discussed beauty as truth. And philosophers, lovers of wisdom, began asking questions that would define the Western mind forever. At the heart of this awakening stood a man named Socrates. He wore no fine clothes, owned almost nothing, and spent his days walking the streets of Athens, talking to anyone who would listen. He asked questions, not to teach, but to make others think. What is justice? What is virtue? What is the good life? He believed wisdom began with the simple admission that we know nothing. But in a society proud of its democracy, such questioning was dangerous. When Athens grew restless after war, Socrates was accused of corrupting the youth and disrespecting the gods. He was sentenced to death, calmly drinking hemlock as his students wept. Yet his death only immortalized his ideas. One of those students was Plato, who founded the Academy, the world's first institution of higher learning. He wrote dialogues, conversations exploring truth, love, and politics. In his work, The Republic, he imagined a society led not by wealth or power, but by philosopher kings, men guided by wisdom and justice. Plato believed the physical world was only a shadow of a higher reality, the realm of pure ideas. His student Aristotle disagreed. He turned his gaze toward the natural world, studying biology, physics, ethics, and logic. He believed knowledge came not from divine insight, but from observation and reason. Aristotle's teachings would later shape science, medicine, and even Christian theology. Through these thinkers, Greece gave the world something priceless, the idea that truth could be discovered, not revealed, that reason, not faith, was the path to understanding. This was not just philosophy, it was the birth of rational thought. And in the heart of Athens, these ideas were about to shape something even greater, democracy itself. Part 4. The Birth of Democracy. The People Take Power.
While kings ruled in Persia and Egypt, the Athenians dared to dream of something different: rule by the people. It began with a noble named Cleisthenes, who in 508 BCE reorganized the government to give ordinary citizens a voice. Power no longer belonged to kings or nobles. It belonged to the ecclesia, the assembly, where citizens could vote, speak, and decide the fate of their city. Every man, rich or poor, had the right to stand before his fellow Athenians and speak. They debated laws, declared wars, judged trials, and chose leaders. It was a radical experiment, one built on trust, courage, and responsibility. Under Pericles, Athens entered its golden age. He declared, "We are lovers of beauty, yet simple in our tastes, lovers of wisdom, yet without weakness." Athens became a city of marble and music, the heart of art, literature, and philosophy. Its democracy inspired a sense of unity never seen before. But democracy was not perfect. Women, slaves, and foreigners had no vote. Power was often swayed by clever speech and emotion. Still, compared to monarchies of the ancient world, it was revolutionary. For the first time, citizens learned that freedom was not a gift, it was a duty. Athens showed that a nation's strength lies not in its kings, but in its people's minds. This fragile system, born 2,500 years ago, would echo through Rome, the Renaissance, and into the parliaments and congresses of today. But Athens knew freedom would soon face its greatest challenge, an empire so vast that it cast a shadow across the entire known world.
Part 5. The Persian Wars. Freedom against tyranny. In the early 5th century BCE, the mighty Persian Empire, ruled by Darius I, stretched from India to Egypt, the largest the world had ever seen. When the small, defiant cities of Greece refused to bow, Persia sought to crush them. In 490 BCE, Persian ships landed on the plain of Marathon. Outnumbered, the Athenians charged into battle, led by courage alone, and won. The legend says a messenger ran 26 miles back to Athens to cry victory before collapsing, the birth of the modern marathon. But the danger wasn't over. 10 years later, Darius's son Xerxes returned with a vast army and fleet. The Greeks united under Spartan leadership to defend their homeland. At Thermopylae, King Leonidas and 300 Spartans held off tens of thousands for 3 days, fighting to the last breath. Though they died, their sacrifice gave Greece time to rally. Soon after, Athens struck back at Salamis, destroying the Persian fleet with clever naval tactics. The war ended in Greek victory, the triumph of freedom over tyranny. These wars forged a shared Greek identity stronger than any alliance. They proved that courage, intelligence, and unity could defeat even the greatest empire. From this victory rose pride, and with it, a new golden era for Greece. But pride, as history often warns, is a dangerous gift. For in the shadow of triumph, the seeds of rivalry were already being sown. Part 6. The Golden Age of Athens: Beauty, Power, and Pride. After the Persian Wars, Athens stood as the leader of Greece, powerful, prosperous, and proud. Under Pericles, the city became a living work of art. Marble temples like the Parthenon rose above the Acropolis, perfect in symmetry and proportion. Sculptors, like Phidias, crafted statues so lifelike that they seemed to breathe. Playwrights, like Sophocles, Euripides, and Aristophanes, filled the theaters with tragedies and comedies that explored human nature, love, honor, fate, and folly. Artists and philosophers walked hand in hand. Science, drama, and democracy thrived together. This was the Golden Age, when the Greek ideal of arete, excellence, reached its peak. Athens became the school of the world, where every art and idea found expression. But power can corrupt.
Athens began to dominate its allies in the Delian League, turning protection into control. Gold meant for defense built temples instead. And Sparta, proud and suspicious, watched Athens grow stronger. The dream of unity was fading, and soon brother would turn against brother.
Part 7. The Peloponnesian War, when Greeks fought Greeks. For nearly 30 years, the Greek world tore itself apart. Athens and Sparta, once allies, became bitter enemies. Sparta, land of warriors, envied Athens' wealth and influence. Athens, proud of its democracy, looked down on Sparta's harsh ways. In 331 BCE, war erupted. The Peloponnesian War, a conflict that would destroy both. Athens had its navy, Sparta, its army. For decades, battles raged across land and sea. Plague struck Athens, killing thousands, including Pericles himself. All the ideals of the Golden Age, reason, justice, democracy, crumbled beneath the hunger for power. By 404 BCE, Athens surrendered. Its empire shattered, its democracy weakened, its glory dimmed. The Greek world lay exhausted. And yet, from this chaos, a new power was rising, one that would unite Greece under a single banner and carry its culture across the earth.
Part 8. Alexander the Great, the legacy of Greece. From the northern kingdom of Macedon came a young prince, Alexander, tutored by Aristotle himself. He learned philosophy and science alongside strategy and war. At just 20, he became king, and within a decade, he conquered the world. From Greece to Persia, from Egypt to India, Alexander's armies marched with lightning speed. But his conquest was not just of land, it was of culture. Everywhere he went, he built cities named Alexandria, spreading Greek language, art, and thought. This fusion of Greek and Eastern cultures gave birth to the Hellenistic Age, a time of scientific discovery, architecture, and philosophy that bridged continents. Though Alexander died young, his vision endured. He dreamed not of domination, but of unity, a world bound by shared knowledge and curiosity. The Greece that began with small city-states now lived across empires. Its ideas would inspire Rome, then the Renaissance, and still guide us today, in every democracy, every debate, every scientific quest. From the ruins of Chronosus to the steps of the Parthenon, from the courage of Leonidas to the mind of Socrates, the legacy